Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you a brand new episode in the story of LyTuDiep and James, two people who have walked through pain and loss, yet continue to sow seeds of hope on the peaceful land they're building together. In this episode, after days filled with work and the excitement of finishing their new home, Diep and James begin their plan to expand the DJ Agriculture Workshop, a place they hope will create jobs for local villagers while also launching the cultivation of a new plant variety they've long dreamed of growing. But just when everything seems to be falling into place, a mysterious letter arrives in James's hands, carrying unexpected news about his biological father, the man he thought he'd left in the past. How will Diep react when she finds out? And will James, after everything, have the courage to face his past to protect the happiness he has now? Stay with me until the end of today's video to see how this emotional chapter unfolds in the story of LyTuDiep and James. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your predictions in the comments below, because every new episode is a journey we continue to write together. The sun had just risen, and James was preparing the paperwork to sign the warehouse rental contract. He had organized everything meticulously, from the renovation design, the import plan, to the company's opening day. Every detail had been carefully calculated, not just as a business project, but as the first step toward the dream that he and Diep had nurtured together for months. But just as he stepped out of the gate, his phone rang. It was the warehouse owner. The man's hesitant voice came through the line before delivering the final blow. "I'm sorry, Mr. James, but I can't rent the warehouse to you anymore. Someone else offered a higher price, and I've already agreed with them." James froze, his expression darkening. He could hardly believe what he had just heard. "But, we agreed yesterday and scheduled to sign today." The man's tone turned cold. "I know, but they're paying double. I can't refuse." Then came the dry, final beep of a disconnected call, leaving behind a heavy silence that seemed to swallow the peaceful morning. James tightened his grip on the phone, his shoulders trembling slightly. Every plan, every careful arrangement he'd made suddenly felt like it was collapsing. From inside the house, Diep stepped out, seeing him standing motionless at the gate. "You haven't left yet?" "The car's already here." Her voice trailed off when she saw his face. Something was wrong. James turned to her, eyes deep and shadowed. He handed her the phone and said quietly, "The warehouse owner changed his mind. Said someone offered twice the price." Diep frowned, confusion flashing in her eyes. "How could that be?" "They just sent the draft contract yesterday." James nodded, a faint, bitter smile crossing his face. "I know. This isn't just about the money. Someone's interfering." She stepped closer, holding his hand. "Don't jump to conclusions yet, maybe it's just a coincidence." But even in Diep's voice, there was a flicker of doubt. Ever since they'd started planning their company, everything had been strangely smooth, until now. Suddenly, things began to unravel: delayed shipments, misprinted blueprints, and now, the warehouse deal collapsing right before signing. James took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I'll find out what's going on. I won't let someone destroy what we've worked for." He went back inside, flipping through the neatly stacked files. And then, something caught his eye. A small sticky note had been placed on the edge of the contract. On it were just a few words. "Don't trust the person who introduced this warehouse. He's not on your side." James frowned, pulse quickening. He recalled the previous night, the middleman, Dung, had brought the papers over in a hurry, glancing around nervously. At the time, James thought nothing of it, assuming Dung was just busy. But now, it all felt too deliberate. Diep looked at the note in his hand, her voice trembling. "James, Do you think someone's been watching us? He didn't answer. His eyes shifted toward the yard outside. The morning sunlight was still golden, the breeze still soft, yet inside him, unease spread like a shadow. Out by the gate, a truck loaded with materials for the new project sat waiting. The driver looked around, puzzled why his employer hadn't come out yet. James finally spoke, his tone low and steady, laced with quiet resolve. If someone wants to play dirty, they'll have to pay the price. He placed his phone on the table and looked toward the road, the one leading to the town, where a man named Dung, the one he had trusted all this time, was waiting. The wind picked up, scattering loose papers across the yard. A morning that had begun like any other had now become the beginning of a storm, one that neither James nor Diep could have foreseen. The afternoon sun dipped low, casting slanted golden light through the trees along the road, painting James's face in a soft, fading hue. He parked his car in front of a small cafe tucked away in an old alley, the same place where years ago, he and his closest friend used to meet to discuss their very first projects. The cafe hadn't changed, the worn wooden tables, the ceiling fan turning lazily, the scent of roasted coffee mingling with faint traces of cigarette smoke. Everything pulled him back to those younger days, when dreams were pure, and belief came easily, before ambition and family power tangled everything in invisible chains. But today, he wasn't here for inspiration. He was here for answers. His old friend, Hoa, was already waiting in the far corner. Hoa had worked in real estate for years, well connected, and had once helped James find his first properties after leaving his father's company. He glanced around carefully before speaking, his voice low enough for only James to hear. "James, you might not want to believe this, but I think your father is behind what happened." James froze, his eyes suddenly sharp. "My father?" His voice cracked, disbelief heavy in his tone. Hoa nodded slowly. "Yes. He doesn't want you starting your own company. To him, you're still the heir of JG Group, not someone who can walk away. I heard he's been buying up every warehouse in the area you were looking at. He said, and I quote, 'I'll do whatever it takes to bring him back.'" The air in the cafe seemed to thicken. The faint clink of a spoon against a cup, the soft whine through the open window, everything became part of a heavy silence. James sat motionless. In his mind appeared the image of his father, upright posture, stern face, cold eyes, and that voice, firm and final. "You were born to inherit, not to start over from nothing." The words echoed in his head like they had all those years ago. He thought leaving home had ended that chapter, but the past, it seemed, was not done with him. A breeze rustled the newspaper on the table. James closed his eyes briefly, steadying his breath. "Thank you, Hoa. I understand." He stood, placed a few bills under the saucer, and walked out. The last light of the setting sun fell across his shoulders, golden, but cold. The western sky burned red, yet inside him there was only a dark heaviness, as if no light could pierce through the weight pressing on his chest. When he returned home, Diep was watering flowers on the porch. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and roses. She turned and smiled softly, her expression pausing him mid-step. "You didn't get to sign the contract, did you?" She asked gently, her voice filled with quiet trust he couldn't bear to break. James hesitated, then forced a small smile. "It's fine. They changed their mind. I'm looking for another place, maybe something even better." Diep nodded, not pressing further. She simply placed her hand on his shoulder, her voice firm but tender. "As long as you don't give up, I know we'll find somewhere better." James looked at her, a mix of affection and guilt swelling inside him. He couldn't bring himself to tell her that the person sabotaging their plans was his own father. He didn't want her to worry, to feel the same helplessness he did, knowing that the man he had to face wasn't just a rival, but a powerful force that once shaped his entire life. Yet deep within him, a different fire was burning, the fire of determination, pride, and the desire to prove that he didn't need the JG name to survive. As night fell, James stepped onto the balcony. The wind from the nearby fields carried a faint chill of the changing season. Below, Diep was still arranging flower pots, the warm glow of the porch light wrapping her in a soft halo. He smiled faintly, then turned back to his desk. Blueprints for the company lay scattered, a few pages caught by the wind and fluttering to the floor. He picked them up carefully, smoothing the edges, and placed them back in order. In the corner of one page, under the desk lamp's glow, the name DJ Agriculture stood out, a quiet reminder of why he had begun all this. Leaning back in his chair, James gazed through the window into the dark horizon. Somewhere out there, his father was likely sitting in his grand office, surrounded by wealth, control, and legacy. But here, in this modest home, James had something far greater: faith, his own two hands, and the woman who chose to stand beside him through it all. And for James, that, not power, not a family name, was the truest kind of strength. It was late at night, and the road leading to his mother's house was veiled in a thin layer of mist. The yellow streetlights stood silently on both sides, casting long, trembling reflections across the damp pavement. James slowed the car, the sound of gravel crunching beneath the tires breaking the quiet. He hadn't been back here in years, not since he chose to start his own life, to walk away from the constant arguments and the suffocating expectations of his father. Yet tonight, with his mind in turmoil, the first place he thought of was home, his mother's home, the only place where he could forget, even for a little while, about the weight of power, wealth, and reputation. The house appeared after a bend, nestled beneath a line of tall areca palms. The porch looked the same, its paint peeling in spots, yet still radiating that same quiet peace. The old wooden chair in the corner, where he once sat listening to his mother's stories, was still there. The warm light from inside spilled through the window, revealing the slender figure of a woman sitting silently. She was waiting, as though she had known her son would return tonight. "I already know," she said softly as he stepped up onto the porch. Her voice was calm but heavy with worry. "Your father interfered again, didn't he?" James stopped. Standing beneath the light, his gaze dropped. Silence filled the air, broken only by the faint hum of crickets from the garden. "He still doesn't believe I can stand on my own," James said hoarsely. "He thinks leaving the company was reckless, that I threw away the future he planned for me." His mother looked at him for a long moment. The lamp's glow reflected off eyes lined with age, but still bright and steady. "My son," she said slowly, "that man doesn't understand that the greatest thing a father can give his child isn't wealth or power, it's trust. If he'd ever truly listened, he would know you didn't walk away out of pride, but because you wanted to live by your own convictions." James lowered his head, his hands clasping tightly together. "I don't want you caught up in this, Mom," he murmured. "Please, just stay out of it. I'll handle it another way." She sighed quietly, then placed her hand firmly on his shoulder, gentle but resolute. "Let me handle this," she said, her tone growing stronger. "He seems to have forgotten that no one has the right to keep their child from chasing their dreams. And he's also forgotten, his wife was never someone who stays silent." She stood and walked inside. James froze, watching her small frame move with a calm, unshakable strength. The light from the living room came on, illuminating a family photo on the wall, taken when James was 18, back when he still believed his father was the greatest man in the world. Then, the phone rang. She stood beside the table, picked it up, and spoke, her voice steady but unwavering. "Listen. If you keep using your power to make things difficult for James, I'll file for divorce tomorrow morning. I don't need your wealth or your name, I just need my son to live the life he chooses." The other end of the line was silent for a long while. James could hear the faint, heavy breathing of a man who once commanded every situation, now struggling to find words. Finally, his father's voice came, low, rough, stripped of its usual authority. "All right. I understand." The line went dead. The room fell silent once more. His mother set the phone down, her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were calm. She turned to see James still standing at the doorway, his eyes red without him realizing it. He stepped forward, trying to speak, but no words came. She smiled, a gentle smile, carrying both tenderness and the quiet pride of a mother who had just stood up against an empire for her child. "The most important thing," she said softly, "is that you keep walking, even if the road leads you there alone." James nodded. His eyes met hers, and in that moment, he realized he was no longer alone. The weight of power, the burden of expectation, all of it seemed to dissolve into the calm warmth of the countryside night, under the soft light spilling from the old house. Outside, the wind stirred the tall palms, their leaves rustling under the moonlight. The faint scent of grapefruit blossoms drifted from the garden, mingling with the steady song of crickets. And there, standing beside his mother, James understood more deeply than ever before, true strength doesn't lie in the power his father held, but in love, the kind that gives a quiet woman the courage to defy an empire, just to protect her son's dream. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the window, spilling across the desk, still scattered with blueprints, folders, and unfinished notes. James sat quietly, his coffee long gone cold. He hadn't slept much the night before. His mind was still tangled between gratitude for his mother and the ache of knowing that two of the people he loved most were now standing on opposite sides of an unspoken war. Then suddenly, the phone rang, slicing through the stillness. He glanced at the screen. It was the warehouse owner. For a brief moment, he hesitated before answering. The man's voice came through, cheerful, a stark contrast to the cold tone of yesterday. "Mr. James, I wanted to apologize for what happened yesterday. The other party, well, they canceled the deal out of nowhere. If you're still interested, we can sign the contract this noon, yes?" James said nothing for a few seconds. His expression shifted, from surprise to quiet composure. A faint smile touched his lips. "Of course. Thank you. I'll be there." He ended the call, leaned back in his chair, and stared at the ceiling, a strange warmth rising in his chest. He knew exactly who was behind that phone call. Not his father, but the quiet, steadfast woman who had fought for him in her own way. The morning light grew brighter, filling the room. On the desk sat a small wooden frame, a photo from the opening day of his and Diep's first agricultural store. His eyes lingered on the gentle face of his mother in the background, her kind smile, tender yet strong enough to make even power itself bow its head. By noon, the signing was complete. Everything went smoothly, almost too smoothly. The warehouse owner was all smiles, shaking hands, speaking warmly, as if trying to make up for the previous day's betrayal. James remained polite but quiet. The satisfaction he felt wasn't from closing the deal, it was from knowing that some battles don't need force or fury. Sometimes, a single voice, spoken at the right time, can shift everything. And his mother had done exactly that. As the afternoon sun began to fade, James drove back to his mother's house. The sky was washed in soft orange, and milk flowers drifted gently onto the narrow path. He parked the car by the gate and saw her sitting beneath the bougainvillea, watering her plants. When she heard the engine, she looked up, smiling with that same serene grace. James walked over without a word. He set a folder, a copy of the signed contract, on the table beside her and quietly took a seat. The breeze carried the scent of damp soil and blossoms. They sat side by side in silence, speaking only through glances, warm, proud, and full of love. She placed her hand over his, her eyes kind yet unwavering. "See," she said softly. "When you stand your ground, even the world has to take a step back." James didn't answer, he just nodded, a faint smile flickering at the corner of his lips. He knew, deep down, that in a life full of storms and struggle, there was nothing stronger than a mother's love and faith. The last rays of sunlight stretched across the porch, bathing the two of them in gold. And amid all the turmoil and ambition beyond those walls, this simple, silent moment, a mother and son sharing peace, was, for James, the most precious gift life could ever give. Idilme came running out of her room, her hair slightly messy, clutching a colorful piece of paper. "Daddy, I drew our new warehouse," she chirped, her voice bright with excitement. James knelt down and took the drawing. On the paper was a red-roofed building surrounded by green trees, with a big sign out front that read, in wobbly, childlike letters, DJ Farm. He stared at it for a long moment, then nodded slowly, eyes glistening with quiet emotion. "That's right, sweetheart," he said softly, stroking her hair. "Our warehouse will be the start of something new, a dream for all of us. And one day, you'll run around the garden behind it, where these seeds will grow." Diep sat beside them, her face glowing as she watched father and daughter together. In that moment, all the fatigue of the past days seemed to melt away. Outside, the night breeze rustled through the grapefruit trees, their cool fragrance flowing gently through the open window, wrapping the house in a calm, tender warmth. James looked toward the porch, where the moon had just risen above the line of bamboo. His heart felt lighter, not just because he'd secured the warehouse, but because he knew he was finally walking his own path. Now, he wasn't just fighting for work or for dreams, but for the right to live by his own heart, free from anyone's shadow. As the night deepened, the light in their small home still glowed, steady and golden. It was the flame of a new beginning, quiet yet unwavering, strong enough to guide them through whatever lay ahead. Stay tuned for the next episode, as James and Diep officially sign the contract for their new warehouse. But a mysterious investor appears with an enticing offer. And behind that offer lies a trap designed to test their trust in each other.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến video tiếp theo về câu chuyện của James và LyTuDiep. Như mọi người cũng đã biết là vấn đề về nhận nuôi bé Nhi đã giải quyết xong. Bà nội của bé Nhi cũng đã chấp thuận và thấy bé Nhi vui vẻ khi sống và James cùng Diep thì cả hai bên đã đồng ý là để cho James và Diep nuôi. Thì liệu chuyện gì sẽ xảy ra tiếp theo? Trong tập này thì James và Diep gặp phải một cái khó khăn khi nào cái kho mà anh muốn thuê thì gặp rắc rối á mọi người. Và giờ cũng chưa biết giải quyết làm sao. Mình cũng đã edit gần xong rồi, mình đang đặt tên video. Mình đang cố gắng để có thể hoàn thành sớm nhất có thể để tải lên cho mọi người.